Every year, Americans spend over $200 billion on meat for protein. Every year, researchers quietly publish studies confirming that some of the most protein-dense foods on Earth are not in the butcher's case. They are growing in gardens, floating in ponds, spreading across roadsides, rising from dry soil in places where meat was never an option and people were stronger for it. What we are looking at today are 12 plants with protein content that rivals or exceeds common animal sources, gram for gram, per calorie, or in the specific amino acid profiles that matter most to a body over 60. These are not nutritional curiosities. Ancient physicians prescribed them. Warriors carried them on campaigns. Civilizations built their physical strength around them. And modern researchers are confirming what traditional cultures never doubted. Pay attention to number 7. It is something the United States government has spent over $500 million in the last decade trying to destroy, while populations in Asia have been eating it as a staple food for 2,000 years. And number 1 is a plant that industrial agriculture replaced with an inferior version so quietly that most people never noticed what disappeared. Every plant on this list has a story worth knowing and a protein profile worth taking seriously. Let's begin. Number 12. Green peas. Most people think of green peas as the vegetable they pushed around their plate as a child. The ancient world thought of them differently. The book of Ezekiel chapter 4 contains one of the most nutritionally specific passages in all of ancient literature. The prophet is instructed to make bread from a blend of wheat, barley, beans, lentils, and field crops. Modern nutritionists who have analyzed that combination have found it to be a remarkably complete protein source. Peas would have grown alongside those crops in the same soil, in the same agricultural tradition. For the same reason, they sustained people when sustaining people was the only priority. Ancient Egyptians cultivated peas 4,800 years ago. Greek and Roman physicians documented them as food for people performing sustained physical labor. The ancient world's version of a reliable protein budget. 1 cooked cup of green peas delivers approximately 9 grams of protein, and what makes that significant is not just the quantity but the quality. Peas contain all 9 essential amino acids, which is genuinely unusual among plant proteins. Most plant sources are deficient in 1 or 2 essential amino acids, which limits how efficiently the body can use them. Peas are an exception. For anyone over 60 whose body requires complete protein to maintain muscle mass that naturally declines with age, that completeness matters as much as the quantity. Laboratory analysis of pea protein shows a digestibility score approaching 0.89 on a scale where 1.0 represents the maximum, placing pea protein closer to egg white than to most other vegetables. Steam for 4 to 6 minutes at temperatures below 85 degrees Celsius. Extended boiling degrades the protein structure. That is why color goes from vibrant green to military drab, signaling that something biochemically significant was lost in the water. The pea does something else the ancient world understood intuitively. It fixes atmospheric nitrogen back into the soil, making the ground more productive for whatever is planted next. It was never just food, it was infrastructure. How to use it. Lightly steamed and eaten immediately. Added to soups in the final 2 minutes of cooking. Blended into a cold soup with mint and lemon. Never boil for extended periods. The color tells you when protein quality is being sacrificed. The moment it goes dull, the damage is done. Number 11. Stinging nettle. This plant introduces itself memorably. Brush against it once, and you remember it for hours. Roman soldiers stationed in the cold provinces of Britain rubbed fresh nettles on their legs before long marches, not as punishment, as medicine. The stinging compounds stimulate circulation in the tissue they contact. The soldiers were performing a crude but effective warm-up protocol for muscles that would be asked to carry armor across cold, wet ground all day. They also ate it, because in a military campaign where protein sources were limited and the body's demands were unlimited, nettles were one of the most nutritionally complete plants available in temperate Europe without cultivation. Stinging nettle contains approximately 6 grams of protein per 100 grams fresh weight, which understates its value significantly because the protein arrives alongside iron, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and vitamin K in concentrations that exceed most cultivated leafy greens. More importantly, nettle provides boron, a trace mineral that research has found plays a critical role in how efficiently the body actually uses the magnesium and protein it receives. For anyone over 60, this matters. Protein absorption efficiency declines with age as digestive enzyme production decreases and gut lining integrity changes. Nettle provides the protein alongside the cofactors that help the aging body actually use it, a combination that supplements rarely replicate and that the Roman military discovered through observation centuries before biochemistry had the language to explain it. The sting disappears entirely with 60 seconds of blanching. What remains tastes like a more mineral-rich version of spinach and contains significantly more protein per calorie than almost any cultivated green available in any grocery store. How to use it. Harvest young spring growth, the top 4 to 6 inches, wearing gloves. Blanch 60 seconds in boiling water. Use exactly as you would cooked spinach. The blanching water is a concentrated mineral broth. Add it to soups rather than discarding it. Dried nettle as tea delivers meaningful protein and minerals year-round. If you have nettles growing near you, you have a free protein source that Roman soldiers valued enough to carry across Europe. Number 10. Pumpkin seeds. Every autumn, millions of Americans carve pumpkins and throw the seeds in the compost without a second thought. Native American communities across the continent did not do that. Pumpkin cultivation in Mesoamerica dates back approximately 10,000 years, making the cucurbit family among the oldest cultivated food plants in the human record. The seeds were dried and stored as a primary protein and fat source through winter. Nothing was discarded. The seed was understood as the most nutritionally dense part of the plant and treated accordingly. 1 ounce of pumpkin seeds delivers approximately 9 grams of protein, more than the same weight of ground beef. But the mineral profile is where pumpkin seeds become genuinely remarkable. 1 ounce provides approximately 40% of the daily recommended intake of magnesium, and magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body, including every step of protein synthesis. Without adequate magnesium, the body cannot efficiently use protein from any source, animal or plant. Studies suggest up to 50% of adults in developed nations are deficient in magnesium without knowing it. The muscle cramps, the poor sleep, the fatigue that many people over 60 attribute to aging are frequently magnesium deficiency presenting itself. Pumpkin seeds also supply significant zinc, critical for immune function and the cellular repair processes that follow any physical exertion. A zinc-deficient body recovers slowly from everything. You are not just eating protein, you are eating the minerals the body requires to actually build something with that protein. How to use it? Lightly toast raw pumpkin seeds in a dry skillet over medium heat for 3 to 5 minutes, stirring constantly until they puff slightly. Season with sea salt only after removing from heat. Salt added during toasting draws out moisture unevenly. 1 ounce daily as a snack, scattered over salads or blended into smoothies. The seeds you are composting every October contain one of the most mineral-dense protein sources available. The ancients stored them carefully through winter because they understood value. The modern world is still learning. Number 9. Amaranth. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived in Mexico and began dismantling the Aztec Empire. He confiscated gold, he destroyed temples, he outlawed ceremonies, and among his first and most deliberate acts of cultural destruction, he banned the cultivation of amaranth, punishable by death. That decision tells you everything about what amaranth meant to the Aztec civilization. It was not a side crop. It was not a ceremonial grain used occasionally. It was central to the physical strength of a civilization that built cities larger than any in Europe at the time. Cortés understood that if you control the protein supply, you control the people. Amaranth was the protein supply. 1 cooked cup of amaranth delivers approximately 9 grams of complete protein with all 9 essential amino acids, including lysine, which is notably deficient in most grain crops. Lysine is critical for muscle repair and calcium absorption. The lack of lysine in wheat is one reason bread-centric diets historically produce populations with lower muscle maintenance than legume and grain combinations. Amaranth solves the lysine problem that wheat cannot. For anyone over 60 focused on maintaining muscle mass, which requires both adequate protein and adequate lysine specifically to trigger muscle repair, Amaranth provides what the most commonly consumed grains are missing. Research has also identified a peptide called leucine in Amaranth that some laboratory studies suggest may inhibit inflammatory pathways at the cellular level. The science is early stage but consistent enough to sustain continued investigation. The Aztecs built one of the most formidable civilizations in human history on this grain. Cortez tried to erase it. It survived. It is still here. That persistence is itself worth noting. How to use it. 1 part amaranth to 2.5 parts water. Bring to a boil. Reduce immediately to a low simmer. Cover and cook for 20 minutes without lifting the lid. The result is a slightly earthy, nutty porridge that works in both sweet and savory preparations. Soak overnight before cooking to reduce phytic acid content, which improves mineral and protein absorption. Available in most health food stores and many mainstream supermarkets. Number 8. Chickpeas. Archaeological evidence from Jericho dates chickpea cultivation to approximately 7,500 BCE, making them one of the earliest domesticated crops in human history. They fed the builders of the early Islamic caliphates, the armies of the Byzantine Empire, the agricultural communities of the Indus Valley Civilization. 3 cultures on 2 continents with no overlap in religious tradition or geographic contact, all arriving independently at the same conclusion about the same bean. When 3 separate civilizations with no contact reach the same conclusion, that convergence is not coincidence. It is observation. The book of 2 Samuel records a moment after David's retreat from Jerusalem. Barzillai and others brought supplies to the exhausted king and his followers, and among those supplies were parched grain, beans, and lentils. Chickpeas would have been among those beans. They were that foundational to survival nutrition in the ancient Near East. 1 cooked cup of chickpeas delivers approximately 15 grams of protein alongside 12 grams of fiber. The fiber matters specifically in the context of protein because it feeds the gut microbiome, which produces short-chain fatty acids that regulate inflammation throughout the body, including the muscle inflammation that follows physical activity. A body with a healthy microbiome recovers faster. Chickpeas build the microbiome while simultaneously delivering the protein. After 60, both gut microbiome diversity and muscle recovery speed decline measurably. Chickpeas address both through a single food. They also contain a notably high concentration of choline, a nutrient most people associate with eggs, which supports acetylcholine production, the neurotransmitter that carries signals from nerves to muscles. Adequate choline is as important as adequate protein for anyone focused on physical function. How to use it. Soak dried chickpeas for 12 hours. Discard the soaking water and cook in fresh water for approximately 90 minutes at a gentle simmer. The soaking process reduces phytic acid by up to 40%, meaningfully improving mineral and protein absorption. Roast cooked chickpeas at 200 degrees Celsius for 25 minutes, with olive oil and sea salt for a snack, delivering 9 grams of protein per half cup, with a texture that satisfies in a way no protein bar manages. 7,500 years of human cultivation is not coincidence. It is the longest field trial in nutritional history. Number 7. Kudzu. The United States government has spent over $500 million in the last decade trying to destroy a plant. It covers over 7 million acres across the American South, spreading at a rate of up to a foot per day in summer heat. Farmers budget for it. Highway departments run eradication programs against it. Counties hold organized removal days. The USDA classifies it as one of the most problematic invasive species on the continent. In Japan and China, this same plant has been eaten as a staple food for over 2,000 years. The plant is called kudzu. And the gap between how America treats it and how Asia has always understood it is one of the most extraordinary nutritional oversights in modern history. Kudzu leaves contain approximately 17 grams of protein per 100 grams dried, comparable to many legumes and exceeding most cultivated leafy greens by a significant margin. The root starch, called kuzu in Japanese cooking, is used as a premium thickening agent and digestive remedy. Traditional Chinese medicine has prescribed kudzu root for over 2,000 years, specifically for what practitioners described as conditions of inflammation and digestive weakness. Research has since identified isoflavones in kudzu root, including puerperin, found in almost no other plant source, that studies suggest may support cardiovascular health and reduce inflammatory markers. The leaves, flowers, vine tips, and root are all edible. Every part of the plant Americans are spending hundreds of millions of dollars destroying is a documented food source with 2,000 years of consistent human use behind it. This plant is almost certainly growing within driving distance of where you are sitting right now, for free, in quantities that no agricultural system could replicate. The ancient world rarely wasted what grew abundantly. The modern world spent $500 million on the attempt. How to use it. Young kudzu leaves and vine tips harvested in spring, before the plant becomes tough, cooked exactly like spinach or any leafy green. Mild flavor, entirely approachable. Kudzu root starch available in Japanese grocery stores and online as a white powder, used as a thickening agent in soups and sauces, 1 tablespoon per cup of liquid. The flowers are edible raw and can be made into jelly. Start with the leaves if you have access to the plant. They are free, abundant, and have been feeding populations across Asia for 2 millennia, while America has been trying to eliminate them. Number 6. Hemp seeds. Hemp appears in Chinese agricultural records as early as 2700 BCE, documented in the Pharmacopoeia attributed to Emperor Shen Nong as a plant of both nutritional and medicinal value. The ancient Scythians, the nomadic horse warriors described by Herodotus as among the most formidable fighters in the ancient world, carried hemp seeds as a primary travel food. Viking-age populations used hemp seeds as both a food source and a crop for rope and sailcloth. Civilizations with nothing in common culturally found the same uses independently across thousands of years and thousands of miles. The stigma attached to hemp for decades had nothing to do with its nutritional profile. The nutritional profile never changed. It was exceptional the entire time. 3 tablespoons of hemp seeds deliver approximately 10 grams of complete protein, all 9 essential amino acids, including methionine and cysteine, which are typically the limiting amino acids in plant proteins. The proteins in hemp seeds are primarily edestin and albumin, 2 globular proteins with a molecular structure that human digestive enzymes break down efficiently. Studies evaluating hemp protein digestibility have reported scores significantly higher than most other plant sources and comparable to egg white. Hemp also delivers an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of approximately 3:1, a ratio some researchers consider close to optimal for managing the inflammatory environment that muscle recovery requires. For anyone over 60, muscle recovery is fundamentally an inflammatory management process. Hemp seeds provide both the protein and the fatty acid environment that supports it simultaneously. How to use it. 3 tablespoons in oatmeal, blended into smoothies, stirred into yogurt, or pressed into a crust for baked fish. No cooking required. No preparation beyond opening the bag. Mild, slightly nutty flavor that disappears into most foods without announcing itself. Store in the refrigerator after opening. The omega-3 content makes them susceptible to oxidation at room temperature over time. The most effortless protein addition on this entire list. Number 5. Lentils. Open 1 Kings chapter 19 and read it slowly. Elijah has just called down fire from heaven in front of 450 prophets. He has won an extraordinary confrontation, and then a single death threat sends him running into the wilderness. He collapses under a broom tree, exhausted, dehydrated, spiritually shattered, and asks God to let him die. What happens next is not a sermon. It is a meal. An angel touches him and says, "Arise and eat." And beside his head is a cake baked on hot coals and a jar of water. He eats. He lies back down. The angel returns. Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. The Hebrew word for the cake described, uga, refers specifically to a flatbread made from ground legumes and grain. Nutritional researchers who have analyzed ancient preparations of similar flatbreads from that region find they would have included ground lentils. The angel did not bring Elijah meat, The angel brought him what we now understand as an optimal recovery meal for acute physical and psychological exhaustion. Lentils deliver 18 grams of protein per cooked cup, more than 3 eggs, more than a serving of Greek yogurt, comparable to a medium chicken breast. The specific amino acid profile includes unusually high levels of leucine, the amino acid that functions as the primary trigger for muscle protein synthesis. When leucine levels in the bloodstream cross a threshold, the body signals the production of new muscle protein. Lentils cross that threshold. They also contain approximately 6 milligrams of iron per cup, approximately 30% of the average daily requirement, in a form that becomes significantly more bioavailable when consumed alongside vitamin C. A squeeze of lemon or a handful of tomatoes in your lentil preparation is not just flavor. It is a nutrient synergy that traditional cooks discovered through observation long before biochemistry had a name for it. For anyone over 60 managing both protein intake and iron levels, which decline together and produce overlapping symptoms of fatigue and slow recovery, lentils address both simultaneously. Elijah ate, drank, and then rose and walked 40 days to Horeb. That is a description of complete restoration from complete depletion. The ancient world did not need researchers to tell them what lentils could do. They showed them how to use it. Red lentils dissolve into a creamy, warming soup in 20 minutes without soaking. Brown and green lentils hold their shape after 30 minutes and work in salads and grain bowls. Never boil at a rolling boil for extended periods. This degrades the protein structure and produces a mushy texture that signals overcooking. Simmer gently. Taste at 25 minutes. Stop before the texture collapses. Add lemon juice after cooking. The vitamin C dramatically improves iron absorption from the same bowl. Number 4. Moringa. There is a tree that grows up to 15 feet in its first year, can be harvested multiple times per season, thrives in poor dry soil that defeats most other crops, and contains a nutritional profile so extraordinary that international health organizations have deployed it specifically in acute famine situations. The Arabic medical tradition documented it in the 13th century as a plant of remarkable sustaining power. Ayurvedic tradition classified moringa as a rasayana, a category of herbs associated with longevity, strength, and the reversal of bodily depletion. Across sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, cultures with no ancient contact, moringa arrived at the same designation independently. The tree you plant when you need to ensure that people do not starve. 100 grams of dried moringa leaf powder contains approximately 27 grams of complete protein with all 9 essential amino acids. Gram for gram, the dried leaves deliver roughly twice the protein of yogurt. They also contain 4 times the calcium of milk by weight, 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, and 3 times the potassium of bananas, all from one plant. For anyone over 60 managing multiple nutritional concerns simultaneously, protein for muscle maintenance, calcium for bone density, potassium for blood pressure, moringa addresses the full spectrum in a single teaspoon of powder. The specific compounds include isothiocyanates that activate NRF2, the master switch for the body's own antioxidant defense systems, a pathway that declines significantly with age, and whose decline accelerates oxidative damage in muscle, neural, and cardiovascular tissue. The miracle tree earned the name not from legend. It earned it from the observable fact that communities planted it when conventional agriculture failed and the people did not starve. How to use it. 1 teaspoon of dried moringa leaf powder stirred into warm water or broth, not boiling, because temperatures above 70 degrees Celsius degrade the vitamin C content measurably. Mild, slightly grassy flavor that blends into almost anything. Fresh leaves added to soups after cooking, used in salads, or sautéed like any leafy green. A moringa tree planted in a warm climate requires almost no maintenance and produces harvests within months. The communities that planted it during famine were not following tradition. They were following results. Number 3. Purslane. In 1992, a researcher named Artemis Simopoulos published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine that quietly unsettled everything nutritionists thought they knew about plant nutrition. She had been studying rural Greek islanders, people with remarkably low rates of heart disease and unusually robust physical condition into old age. When she analyzed their diet looking for the variable that explained their health outcomes, she found purslane, a sprawling, fleshy-leaved plant they added to salads and stews without a second thought. The same plant most American gardeners spend their summers pulling out and composting. Simopolis had gone looking for an omega-3 explanation. She found it. But the protein finding was equally significant and received almost no attention. Purslane contains a complete amino acid profile, all 9 essential amino acids, making it one of the only leafy vegetables that qualifies as a complete protein source. The protein content per calorie exceeds most cultivated greens significantly. For context, you would need to eat approximately 3 times the volume of spinach to obtain the same protein per calorie ratio that purslane delivers. Ancient Greek physicians described it as a cooling medicinal food. Traditional Mexican cooking has used it as verdolaga, a valued ingredient in soups and stews, for centuries. It appears in the culinary records of the Mediterranean, Middle East, India, China, and Central America simultaneously. When a plant appears independently in the food traditions of 5 separate ancient cultures across 3 continents, the reason is not cultural coincidence. The reason is that people who ate it regularly were observably stronger, healthier, and more resilient than those who did not. After 60, when protein efficiency and anti-inflammatory balance both require deliberate attention, purslane delivers on both simultaneously. The only land plant that combines complete protein with meaningful omega-3 content, including trace amounts of the long-chain marine forms, typically found only in fish. How to use it. Raw in salads. The fleshy leaves have a pleasant lemon flavor and a satisfying crunch, stirred into cooked dishes in the final minute to preserve the heat-sensitive omega-3 content. The Greek preparation: fresh purslane, olive oil, lemon, salt. That combination produced the health outcomes that Simopolis spent a career trying to explain. The plant is almost certainly growing in your garden right now as a weed. It has always been there. The decision to compost it rather than eat it is recent, cultural, and nutritionally costly. Number 2. Spirulina. The Book of Exodus describes the Israelites in the wilderness subsisting on manna, a substance appearing on the ground each morning, small and white, gathering from the surface of water or ground. Scholars have proposed various natural explanations. What is documented history rather than theological speculation is this. The Aztecs harvested spirulina from Lake Texcoco and pressed it into dried cakes called tecuhtlatl, sold in markets alongside corn and beans as a primary protein source. The Kanembu people around Lake Chad in North Africa have harvested and dried spirulina for centuries, consuming it as dihe, a food still eaten today. 2 cultures on 2 continents, separated by an ocean with no recorded contact, independently developed harvesting and preservation methods for the same microorganism. NASA studied spirulina for long-duration space missions. When cargo weight determines survival and every gram must justify its presence, spirulina's nutritional output per gram is difficult to match with any other food source. Spirulina is approximately 60 to 70% complete protein by dry weight. Beef is approximately 26%. Chicken is approximately 31%. Spirulina does not merely compete with animal proteins. It nearly triples them by proportion. 2 tablespoons deliver approximately 8 grams of highly bioavailable protein alongside iron, B vitamins, beta-carotene, and phycocyanin, the blue-green pigment that is the subject of active research for its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Studies suggest phycocyanin inhibits the production of certain pro-inflammatory compounds, with results researchers consider worth further clinical investigation. For anyone over 60, the combination of exceptional protein density with anti-inflammatory compounds addresses the 2 primary challenges of aging physiology simultaneously: maintaining muscle mass while managing the chronic low-grade inflammation that accelerates its loss. How to use it. Begin with 1 teaspoon in cold water, citrus juice, or a smoothie. The flavor is distinctly oceanic and assertive. Cold preparation is essential because heat above 60 degrees Celsius begins to degrade the phycocyanin content. After 2 weeks, most people find the taste unremarkable. Masking in fruit smoothies is entirely legitimate. You can cultivate spirulina at home in transparent tanks exposed to sunlight. It doubles its biomass in 3 to 5 days under optimal conditions. The ancient world found this protein on the surface of desert lakes and understood immediately what it was, not superstition. Survival intelligence. Number 1. Black soybeans. Everyone who follows plant-based nutrition has heard of soybeans. Yellow soybeans, edamame, tofu, tempeh. These are the familiar forms. What almost no one in the Western world knows is that the black-seeded variety, glycine max, was the original cultivated form in ancient East Asia, and that the two varieties differ meaningfully in their nutritional profile in ways that matter significantly. Traditional Chinese medicine categorized black soybeans separately from yellow soybeans because practitioners observed different therapeutic effects. Shennong's Pharmacopoeia, attributed to China's mythical first emperor, describes black soybeans specifically as tonifying for what was understood as vital essence, a concept that maps closely onto what we now call mitochondrial energy production. Traditional Japanese families elevated black soybeans to ceremony, kuromame, black soybeans simmered slowly with soy sauce, eaten as a ceremonial food during New Year's celebrations, specifically for their association with health and longevity. Then industrial agriculture replaced them with yellow soybeans, higher yield, easier to process into oil and meal, more profitable per acre. The black variety was quietly set aside. Black soybeans deliver approximately 29 grams of protein per cooked cup, comparable to a 4-ounce chicken breast. The protein is complete, but the distinction from yellow soybeans is in the anthocyanin content. The black seed coat is dense with cyanidin-3 glucoside, the same anthocyanin that makes blueberries nutritionally significant. Research has found that black soybean anthocyanins demonstrate measurable antioxidant activity and that regular consumption is associated with markers of improved metabolic health in published food science research. The results are consistent enough to sustain continued investigation. For anyone over 60, this combination, the protein equivalent of chicken breast alongside the antioxidant profile of blueberries in a single food, addresses both muscle maintenance and oxidative damage that accumulates with age through one preparation. When you cook black soybeans, the cooking liquid turns a deep purple red. That liquid is not waste. It contains meaningful concentrations of the water-soluble anthocyanins. Traditional Chinese and Japanese preparations retain that liquid specifically as a medicinal component. The part most modern cooks pour down the drain was the part traditional practitioners considered the most valuable. Industrial agriculture made a commercial decision to replace black soybeans with yellow ones. That decision optimized for yield and profit. It did not optimize for the anthocyanin profile that traditional cultures had spent centuries observing and preserving. What processing destroyed, ancient hands had carefully maintained. How to use it. Soak dried black soybeans for 12 hours. Cook in fresh water at a gentle simmer for 90 minutes until just tender. Do not discard the cooking liquid. Use it as a broth base or drink it warm. The flavor is earthy, slightly sweet, entirely different from yellow soybeans. Available in Asian grocery stores, health food stores, and online. Most mainstream supermarkets do not carry them, which is the most accurate summary of what happened to them and why.